So we thought the trade war between the United States and China was over, but it has reignited with Trump threatening to impose an additional 100% tariffs and China tightening export controls on rare earth minerals. For more on tensions between the world's two largest economies, we're joined today by Jeff Moon, president of China Moon Strategies and former Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for China. Mr. Moon, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So, as someone who served as the Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for China Affairs during the Obama administration, how do you assess the current situation and how long do you think this tension might last?
In recent months, the U.S. and China have been trying to build trust and establish a stable environment for resolving their trade differences. Top negotiators met in Geneva in May, and they agreed that the U.S. would pause tariffs if China agreed to continue supplying rare earths. Well, since then, however, both sides have accused each other of taking aggressive steps that have undermined that fragile consensus. For example, Beijing believes that Washington's revised entity list policy was aggressive, while the U.S. makes the same claims about China's new rare earths licensing policy. Hostile rhetoric in recent days has even included personal attacks, suggesting that both sides are frustrated and are reluctant to compromise. Frankly, all of this reminds me of sort of a tense basketball game where both sides are fighting at the net to get the ball and score. Sometimes the competition gets too rough and referees need to remind the players to stop pushing and shoving each other so the game can go forward for the benefit of everyone. I'm optimistic that in the end, negotiators will find a way for Trump and Xi to meet in South Korea, and they will agree to a mini deal that resolves some bilateral trade issues while leaving the toughest problems like subsidies and overcapacity unaddressed.
I see. And Washington is trying to tone down tensions with Beijing, and Trump said the United States wants to help China, not hurt it. And the Treasury Secretary also suggested that the China tariff truce could be extended. So how is the United States approaching talks with China at this stage?
The U.S. is trying to push back on China's latest rare earth export controls, which the U.S. thinks really poses a serious threat to the global electronic supply chain, while signaling a willingness to move forward on the broader bilateral trade agenda. Meanwhile, the elements of a potential mini deal are clear. China wants lower U.S. tariffs, reduced export controls, and investment opportunities in the U.S. The U.S. is seeking fentanyl cooperation, rare earths, and sales opportunities. So the question is really whether and how negotiators can find a middle ground. The negotiations aren't transparent, so the current state of play in the short term isn't clear. But as I said before, I think it's more likely than not that the U.S. and China will reach some sort of limited deal at Seoul. But the problem is that there's increasing downward pressure on the bilateral relationship at this point. And the flurry of emotional announcements and statements over the past week reminds us that there's still a lot that could go wrong between now and the APEC meeting.
Right, and we're now just about 2 weeks away from the APEC meeting that you just mentioned here in South Korea, where President Donald Trump could meet with President Xi Jinping. And Trump is also scheduled to meet South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung. What do you think Trump hopes to achieve from his visit to South Korea?
Well, I would distinguish between what Trump personally hopes to achieve at APEC and the broader U.S. national interests at APEC. I think that Trump's personal priorities include a potential meeting with Xi Jinping, where he hopes to announce a mini deal that will resolve some of the issues out there. He also wants to hold bilateral trade meetings with President Lee and other world leaders to make progress on other bilateral trade agreements as well. Those goals are separate and distinct from the broader diplomatic reasons why the U.S. participates in APEC. What's unique about APEC is that it is a consensus-led regional forum that meets year-round and is designed to promote broadly shared goals. So APEC promotes friendly relations between regional leaders and is an excellent venue for sharing best practices among the private and public sector stakeholders that are there. I participated in APEC both as a U.S. official and as a businessman and valued the unique interaction between government and private sector stakeholders. That interaction is designed to increase cooperation but not tackle the most controversial issues. So heads of state attend APEC plenary meetings to lend prestige to the regional consensus reflected in APEC's broader agenda. And then they hold other meetings on the margins to address ongoing issues that may or may not be related to APEC's multilateral activities.
Right, and tensions between Washington and Beijing are directly affecting Korean companies now. And China imposed sanctions on Hanwha Ocean for allegedly cooperating with the United States on port fees. What does this signal, and how do you think the South Korean government should respond?
Well, as you know, South Korea's leading security partner is the U.S., but its largest trading partner is China. So Seoul's near-term challenge with regard to China is that China wants to dominate the Asia region. It wants to disrupt the U.S.-South Korea partnership. It wants to punish South Korean firms to discourage cooperation with Washington. Frankly, South Korea has seen this behavior before. China reacted to South Korea's 2016 announcement of plans to host American THAAD missiles with economic coercion of various forms. Similarly, China is now signaling its general intention to lash out at countries and firms that are cooperating with the U.S. during the current trade war with China. China's taking these measures not from a position of strength, because not only is economic coercion a key element of its trade playbook, but China's economy is faltering under the weight of a real estate crisis that is pulling down a third of its economy. China has reacted to this crisis by doubling down on high-end manufacturing, which is causing massive overcapacity and a need to dump products in overseas markets like the U.S. and South Korea. So I believe South Korea has done an admirable job in navigating these challenges, both in the past and now, and I think Seoul will continue to do so. But global trade tensions are increasing, and there will be dips and turns in the road ahead that all nations will find challenging in the years ahead.
Right, we'll have to see how that plays out. All right, Mr. Moon, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.